Welcome back to the Illinois Fighting Illini Dynasty. I'm your host, Jay Shoob. We got a good one here for you guys today. We're going to talk about the Illini's team preview going into this season. It is the 2022 season, David Diehl's second year as head coach, and there's a lot of buzz around this program, a lot of positive energy coming off of last season as the Illini completely shattered expectations for them and really put this program back on the map, made football more exciting again around Champaign, and now we are in the second year, and we couldn't be any more excited about how this team builds upon that success. So last year, Illinois finished 9-4. They went 8-4 in the regular season, finished 4th in the Big Ten West, and then they won their bowl game against Louisville to cap off their 9-4 season. A lot of great plays, a lot of exciting upsets last year against marquee teams. Had some down moments as well, but overall a lot more good than bad. And as I said, just completely shattered expectations. So, with success comes expectations, and that's the theme now for this season going into year 2, is that now that Illinois has proven that they can be successful with this roster, there are now expectations. Illinois will certainly look to build upon that 9-4 season. That 9-win mark is certainly at least the minimum goal for this team as they try to build and take another step forward upon what they accomplished last season. Overall, I'd say that the roster is better. They certainly will have some big-time players coming back in certain positions, a lot of good returning production in certain areas, and then they also lost a lot of production in certain areas as well. So don't get me wrong, there certainly are going to be some question marks with this team in certain positional areas, but overall, I'd say this roster is a little bit improved upon last season. One of the biggest questions for me is Isaiah Williams, the quarterback. The quarterback means so much to a team. So much of a team's success hinges on the play of their quarterback. And for Illinois, it's Isaiah Williams. He won the job last year as a sophomore. He beat out Matt Robinson, and now he is the true bona fide starter. There's no question. There's no QB battle. He is the guy. And Isaiah Williams is going into his junior season. He certainly had some flashes of excellence last year. He definitely has a lot of raw talent, especially with his legs. But he also showed areas where he struggled, such as turnovers. Turnovers were a big issue for him last year, and we'll see if he can make that jump and sort of be more consistent. At the running back position, there's also a big question. Last year, Illinois had Mike Epstein. He was a huge factor in Illinois' success last year. He was the bell cow. He got all the carries, and now he is gone. So it'll be a question of whether it'll be Chase Brown or Chase Hayden. Will one of those two guys end up taking the job and being the feature back in this offense, or will Illinois go to a committee? At wide receiver, Kamari Thompson. Kamari Thompson had a big season last year. He didn't necessarily have the highest volume, but whenever he did make plays, he made them in big situations, and he had a good offseason, and he takes a big step forward into this offense. Luke Ford is back as well. I expect him to have a huge uptick in production this year. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Illinois has a lot of studs coming back, such as Tariq Barnes, Keith Randolph, and Eddie Smith. But then on the flip side, they also lost guys in some key areas, and they will have 2 true freshmen starting on defense, which we will cover here in a minute. It's certainly exciting, but it definitely puts a big hole on this defense to see 2 true freshmen starting. So we'll see what they can get out of those guys. It'll be very interesting to see how this team molds together over the season. So with that being said, let's dive into this roster. So as I said, overall, I'd say this roster is improved. Marquez Beeson is now the highest rated player on this roster. Luke Ford, Vertus Brown, Isaiah Williams up there as well, leading the pack. You can see, comparing it to last year, this roster certainly overall is a little bit better. A lot of players a little more highly graded. But we'll start with the QB position. As I mentioned before, Isaiah Williams returning from last year. Can he limit the turnovers? Can he be more consistent? Especially in the second half of the year, he really struggled with turnovers, and we'll look to see if he can make that leap. And then no more Matt Robinson. If you followed along the offseason video, Matt Robinson is gone. So Deuce Spann and Samaria Collier will be the backups now. They're certainly guys that could start in the future. At running back, As I mentioned, Chase Brown and Chase Hayden, they both have contrasting styles. Chase Brown is a stronger running back, more of a power back, and Chase Hayden is faster and certainly a bit more agile than Chase Brown. So it'll be interesting to see how Illinois attacks this. I haven't heard any reports that one of them has won the job over the other. So if I had to guess right now, I'd say maybe Illinois goes committee style at running back, but we'll see. Certainly a huge contrast in styles, but Illinois can use that to their advantage, I should say. At wide receiver, Jafar Armstrong returns, the transfer from Notre Dame from a couple years ago. He will be wide receiver 1. Kamari Thompson, he was the leading receiver last year in terms of receiving yards. He also was the team leader in touchdown receptions, and he did this all while having fewer receptions than most of the other receivers on this team. So Kamari Thompson really made it count when he touched the ball. So now Kamari Thompson will be the wide receiver 2. He'll be one of the primary receivers on this team. Kyron Cumby, you guys all know he was a breakout star last year. He returns. He led the team in receptions and yards after contact amongst the receiving core. He will be continued to use out of the slot and on special teams as well. And then DeLayvin Campbell. DeLayvin Campbell made improvements this offseason. He certainly bumped his grade, and he will be a lot more involved in this offense as well. And then you got guys like Patrick Bryant, James Frenchie Jr., who you might see here and there throughout the season. At tight end, Luke Ford. Luke Ford made some big plays last year. I'd like to see him be a little bit more involved this year, so Illinois will make that a point of emphasis. He will be a fifth-year senior. He is one of the highest graded players on this team. Illinois will certainly look to utilize Luke Ford going into the season. And then Griffin Moore. Griffin Moore will now take over for what Daniel Barker was last year. He is the second-string tight end. And taking a look here at the summary of offensive skill positions, a lot of guys returning here. Not a lot to question here. This is probably, outside of running back, probably the strongest unit, I would say, on this team. A lot of guys coming back, and I think Illinois knows what they have, and they know what they have to do here with these guys, and these guys will certainly be the engines of this offense. Now moving over to the offensive line at left tackle, Brevin Jones. He is the starter. He really struggled last year with sacks. He gave up the most amount of sacks on the offensive line last season. And if his struggles continue, Illinois could look to go somewhere else at left tackle. But for right now, they're going to give him his shot to see if he can make a jump this year and improve. So he will be the starting left tackle. At guard, Jordan Slaughter. He has big shoes to fill, following in the footsteps of Kendrick Green. Kendrick Green, of course, was the lone draftee that Illinois had last year. So now Jordan Slaughter will take over that spot at left guard. At center, Preston Angle was quietly very solid last year. If you look at the numbers, he was pretty good last year, so he will return as the starting center. At right guard, Vertus Brown takes over for Blake Jersady. You could make an argument that Vertus Brown should have started last season, and he could be a candidate to move over to left tackle if Brevin Jones struggled, but Vertus Brown had a good offseason. He certainly made a jump, so we'll see what happens there. And then at right tackle, Julian Pearl, kind of like Preston Angle. He was quietly kind of solid last year. He only gave up 1 sack. A lot of that can be attributed to Isaiah Williams, just looking at the numbers, but we'll see how Julian Pearl plays this year. And if you take a look here at the offensive line, it's one of the more interesting units on this team, in my opinion, because there's a lot of upperclassmen. You have 5 fifth-year seniors starting, but only 3 of the guys returning are returning starters. So Jordan Slaughter and Vertus Brown, even though they're fifth-year seniors and you'd think they'd have that experience, they didn't start last year. So it'll be very interesting to see how this team performs. The running blocking was very solid last year. The pass blocking was not. So it's kind of a big question mark. I'm not really sure how this will turn out. Now moving over to the defensive side of the ball. At left end, Keith Randolph Jr. will start. As always, he was the second on the team in sacks last year behind Jamal Woods. And then at right end, Seth Coleman. He also was very solid as well last year. He will start at right end. So Keith Randolph and Seth Coleman, very good returning starters for Illinois at the defensive end position. At the defensive tackle position, this is one of the more interesting positional units on the team. There are no returning starters from last year. Anthony Shipton didn't play a single snap last year, but the coaching staff believes that him and Jerzon Newton will not be a massive drop-off after losing Jamal Woods and Calvin Avery and Dion Pate last year. They were outstanding last season. This was definitely one of the most shining units on the team. And the previous regime left David Diehl's coaching staff with a lot of depth here at this position. So they don't expect a huge drop-off, but it'll be interesting to see how Shipton and Jerzon Newton play, being that they didn't play a single snap last year. So we'll see how that plays out. At outside linebacker, Patrick Coleman, the true freshman, he was one of the highest graded players in this recruiting class. He will start. The coaching staff likes him a lot, and he could be a starter here on the defense for a long time. He has the raw tools, but will have to work on his awareness. But he's getting the starting job over guys like Hart and Meade. At middle linebacker, of course, Tariq Barnes, complete stud last year. He was an All-American. He will continue to anchor this defense at the middle linebacker position. He will be looking to capitalize on his senior season. And then at right outside linebacker, Shimon Cooper, also a returning starter from last year, very solid. He put up decent numbers. So a little bit of mix of experience and youth at the linebacker position. And you can see the defensive front seven here. Defensive tackle, certainly two guys that didn't start last year, but you got a little bit of mix of old and new here. And I think this will not be an area of concern on this team. I really expect Patrick Coleman to be able to blend in pretty well here with all this experience around him. And now moving over to the secondary, we'll start at corner, where Marquez Beeson is the feature corner here. He struggled at the beginning of last season, and then he had a good end to the season. You didn't really hear much from him last season, but that's usually a good thing if you don't hear a cornerback's name. I think he quietly had a very solid end of the season despite really struggling at the beginning. And he has the raw skills. He has the highest graded player on this team. He can solidify himself as an NFL prospect in his junior season, but he has to take that leap this season. Can he be more consistent? Then you have Devin Witherspoon, who started the season kind of strong. He made some plays at the beginning of the year. Then he really fell off towards the end of the season. He really got exposed at times. He doesn't necessarily have the raw skills, but he will try to bounce back and finish strong in his senior season. And then you have Daniel Edwards and Prince Green. They were sort of thrown into the fire last year as true freshmen. They certainly had their struggles, but then they also had some shining moments as well. Each of them got big interceptions last year, so they will be sort of like the slot corners or nickel backs on this defense. At free safety, here's the other true freshman starter. It is Darren Robinson. Darren Robinson was the highest rated recruit in this year's recruiting class. He can also, like Patrick Coleman, be a starter on this defense for a long time. The coaching staff likes him a lot. And then right behind him, you have Cornelius Taylor at free safety as well. Cornelius Taylor, he could arguably start at this position as well. So there's kind of been a battle going on between Robinson and Taylor. But from what I'm hearing right now, Robinson will get the nod. But don't be surprised if Robinson struggles at all, that you could see Cornelius Taylor jump in here at safety. And after the departure next season of Eddie Smith, Cornelius Taylor will take over as a starter. So either way, you're going to be seeing a lot of these two. And then Quincy Bolden as well. You could have made an argument for him to be a candidate to start, but Illinois wants to give him some separation on the depth chart, so they're going to redshirt him this season. And then at strong safety, Eddie Smith. He was one of the better pleasant surprises last year as a transfer. He came over from Alabama, so he brought over that Nick Saban mentality from Tuscaloosa. He was very good last year, made some big plays, so he will certainly help balance out the youth in the secondary as a true senior this season. And then special teams, Caleb Griffin, very solid last year. He made almost all of his field goals. He's a fifth-year senior. And then Hugh Robertson will be the punter as a sophomore. So to wrap up here, the secondary, a lot of youth, but I expect the secondary to be a little bit improved last year. Losing Jartavius Martin will certainly be a big hit, but I think overall, there will be a net improvement, and I'm really interested to see how Darren Robinson and Cornelius Taylor mesh in, being thrown into the fire as true freshmen this season. Special teams should be certainly improved as well, both those guys coming back. So there you have it. There's the roster. And now we will get into some preseason accolades. So we're going to cover the schedule here. Of course, we open the season at Missouri. The arch rivalry is being renewed. Illinois is doing a home-on-home with them, so I'm really excited for that game. Opening up the season with a tough non-conference opponent on the road. Then we have Northern Illinois at home. We open up Big Ten play with Maryland in rotation from the East. Then a bye week, Arkansas State at home. And then we go at Rutgers, who is no longer a cross-divisional rival, but we still play them in rotation. So we'll be going at Rutgers for the second year in a row. And then Penn State, our new cross-divisional opponent. So Illinois will start this season with Penn State at home, and we will go at Penn State next year. Very excited for that series moving forward in this dynasty. Certainly a bump up from Rutgers. And then after the bye week, we get Minnesota at home. Then we have Iowa at home as well. And as I explained in the off-season video, not sure why we don't play them away this year. Kind of a quirk with the algorithm setting the schedule. I hope that fixes itself next year. But anyways, we go at Nebraska following that. Purdue at home, at Wisconsin again, and then we finish the season at Northwestern. So a couple road games to end the season this year. So very looking forward to it. And then the preseason rankings, the Florida Gators, last year's national champions. They went 15-0 last year, won the college football playoff there, ranked number 1. The usual suspects, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma up there. North Carolina was a very good team last year as well. You can see Nebraska is the highest ranked Big Ten team there, coming in at number 10. Iowa falls at 19, Ohio State at 20, Michigan at 22. Minnesota jumps in there at number 25. And then there's our Illini right there at number 28. So Illinois will start the season unranked, but they're right outside looking in at the top 25. And if you ask me, I think that's about right. Illinois finished the season last year as a top 25 team, but I think if Illinois starts the year off with a couple wins, I think they will jump right back into the polls. So I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Not going to complain about that one. And then the conference outlook. Nebraska, last year's Big Ten champions, they snapped the streak of Ohio State winning the Big Ten. They finally had a chance to get to the Big Ten championship game for the first time since joining the conference. They start out as the preseason favorite to win the Big Ten West. Iowa last year started off the season very strong, but then they ran into our Illini in Champaign, kind of derailed their season. They ended up losing to Nebraska at the last game of the regular season. And then they lost their bowl game in the New Year's Six. Minnesota was also a quietly good team last year. So those are kind of the teams that Illinois will look to overcome this year. And then over to the East, Ohio State won the East last year, but they finished the season with 6 losses. They had a very up and down season, kind of a down year for Ohio State. So we'll see if they bounce back and continue to be strong again. Then you have Michigan, Michigan State, and Penn State, who certainly are always candidates to win the division. Overall, the Big Ten certainly was down last year, so we'll see how that changes this year. And then the preseason All-Americans, we'll cover this very briefly. Sam Howell, who won the Heisman last year, Breece Hall, Javion Hawkins, Nico Reganey, Wan'Dale Robinson, 2 Big Ten wide receivers up there, first team. And then you can see Seth Coleman, first team all-right end, Tariq Barnes, and then Kyron Cumbie at returner. I kind of take that with a grain of salt, especially on defense. The algorithm sort of is very generous with setting the defensive first team and second team All-Americans. But looking here at first team All Big Ten, Spencer Petras, Master Teague, Zach Charbonnet, they all return this year. Payne Durham is first team All Big Ten at tight end. I would place a futures bet right now on Luke Ford maybe finishing up there by the end of the season, but we'll see. Keith Randolph at left end, Seth Coleman for the Illini, Tariq Barnes, of course, is up there at middle linebacker, Marquez Beeson at corner, questionably, and Witherspoon, as I said before, take that with a grain of salt. The algorithm isn't necessarily best here, especially on the defensive side. But there you have it. And of course, Kyron Cumbie, more than deserved, first team All Big Ten at returner. And then the Heisman watch. Sam Howell, of course, is the leader right now going into the season. DeMarcus Bowman, Breece Hall, Kendall Milton, and then Javion Hawkins round out the running backs. Javion Hawkins we saw last year in the Pinstripe Bowl. So there you have it. Those are the preseason accolades going into this season. And we will turn the page here and look forward to week 1. Week 1, we will be going to Columbia, Missouri to face the Missouri Tigers, the arch rivalry. As of right now, Missouri is a 2-point favorite. And it'll be a very interesting test, I think, for Illinois. This is a team that on paper is pretty evenly matched, and they are on the road. Last year, they started off the season with UTSA at home, so it was sort of a good way to ease into the new roster. But this one will be very fun. Not sure really what to expect. I expect Illinois to at least put up a good performance. I expect this game to, at the very minimum, be close either way. I don't expect a blowout. Connor Bazelak was quietly a solid quarterback last season, even though he didn't play much. So I think Connor Bazelak, even though he doesn't have a lot of experience, I think is a solid quarterback for Missouri. That all being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And before we wrap up here, I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we're going to structure the Dynasty this season. I know, like I said, I talk to you guys a lot in the comments, and I really appreciate it when you guys comment. It makes it so much better. So be early, be commenting. It makes it so much better. And a couple of you have said the game lengths maybe were a little bit too long, and I sort of agree with that. I kind of do lean towards the side of I want to bring a more of an authentic format to this Dynasty, and I want to try to keep it that way. But at the same time, some of the game video lengths last year were pretty long. So my goal is to try to cut them down to maybe at most 35 minutes. Try to make the games like 30, 35 minutes, maybe even 25 if you guys really want that. But no more 45, 50, or 55-minute videos. So I'm going to try to cut out some plays that are really not necessary. But I also don't think you really can get the full picture, the full storyline, unless you see most of the plays that go on. That's kind of the style that I prefer. But the game lengths will be shortened a little bit. And then let me know in the comments, what are you guys most excited for this season? Let me know in the comments. Let me know who your favorite players are. What are your predictions for the season? What do you think Illinois' record will be? I showed you guys the schedule coming off that 9-4 season. Do you think Illinois will be better? Do you think they will be worse? Do you think they'll be about the same? Do you think they can compete for the Big Ten? I didn't really talk about that, but do you think Illinois is a bona fide Big Ten championship contender now? So, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will see you next episode for week 1 as the Illini travel to face Missouri. See you guys then.